Welcome to the Personal Injury Marketing Minute, where we quickly cover the hot topics in the legal marketing world. I'm your host, Lindsay Busfield. For decades, we have heard the same commercials over and over. A deep, trusted voice booms, "At so-and-so law firm, we get the justice you deserve." So many firms have used this phrase that it has become a trite pillar of personal injury branding. But it can be hard to break away from what is expected. There are risks if you try to position yourself outside of the norm. What if it doesn't resonate with clients? What if the other law firms make fun of you? Yeah, that's possible. But there are also some great rewards if you can make it a memorable brand that sticks. Rudin of Rudin Law joins us today to discuss his unconventional branding initiative, Get Rude. Thank you so much for joining us today, Lee.
Lindsay, it's going to be fun.
All right. Well, before we jump into your branding, tell us a bit about your law firm and how you got started.
Sure. I started as a defense lawyer a dozen years ago, 13 years ago now. And the firm I was at was a hybrid. So we dabbled in some plaintiff work, but it was a varied practice where I got exposed to a whole bunch of things. And as time progressed, my practice evolved into doing a good bit of injury work on the defense side, whether it was premises work, slip and fall, trip and fall, maybe it was auto cases, or just kind of the something strange, like maybe a product liability injury. But I started doing it. I got to know the law really well. And then, as luck would have it, and maybe just me being who I am, I had somebody close to me. It was actually a cleaning lady that has been cleaning my wife and I's houses several houses ago, got into a tiff. And she said, "Lee, like this landlord's really trying to take advantage of me." And I said, "I know you, I know your family. Like, there's no way this is true. Let me see if I can help." And that I did help her. And she said, "How can I repay you?" And I said, "Tell your friends and family if they ever get into a wreck or need help, like to call me." And that's how this kind of began. It was just trying to help somebody. And then, organically you get a reference and a friend and a family member. And all of a sudden, referral begets referral and the snowball begins to grow. And I grew this plaintiff injury practice in two different defense firms. And by the time I left my last one, I had this nice book of business. And my firm looked at me and said, "Lee, like, we love what you're doing, like, good for you, but we can't have you building a plaintiff practice in our defense firm. And also, we kind of want some more of that money that you're getting." So I said, "I can't let you limit what I'm doing in terms of business development. And I definitely don't want to share more of the money that you told me I was entitled to because it was your deal." So that's how this began.
Well, and that's a great story. I mean, clearly you have been able to see both sides of everything, and you had that moment that was that passion moment for you, where it's like, aha, this is really the side that I want to be working on. And then beyond that, you found a way to grow your practice in a way that was really organic and natural to you and building on character and trust as you're developing this brand. And so I love that you have transitioned that into something that is truly your own, that you can own and put your own personality into. So, talk to me a bit about what inspired you to break away from the traditional personal injury branding and develop the Get Rude campaign.
Let's take it a step back, right? Ordinarily, in the legal practice, I'd say 95% of law firms don't advertise, right? Because we as lawyers are holier than thou. I joked we have this dignified, sterling reputation that we're worried about protecting. So we don't advertise. And when I started this firm, I thought, what kind of business would you start as a new business and then not tell anybody what you do? Like, that makes no sense to me. So once I got to the point where I'm like, I have to advertise, of course you have to advertise. Then I said, well, how am I going to do it? And I figured if I can't have fun doing it, I'm going to hate it because recording the social media videos and doing, podcasting, it takes time and it can be a chore. And if you don't enjoy it, then it is going to become just that. So then I figured out, well, what is it that I think is fun? And it has to obviously be authentic. So the Get Rude branding started, me just in my craziness thinking like, how do I make this work? I know Rude and Rudin work. I remember saying this to my wife and she hated it. But I would look at folks like you, we'd be on a Zoom or a Google Meet chat, and I'd say, "Hey, Lindsay, are you tired of getting pushed around by insurance companies? And everybody would look at me, and I'd either get the side eye or the tilt of the head or a wry smile. And I'd say, well, you got to stop being polite and get rude. And they would chuckle or smile or something. And I said, I think this is going to work because it's kind of silly but it's memorable and it's simple and it fits with what we encounter as injury lawyers because we have clients that come to us over and over and over with different but the same kind of story. Hey, I can't get them to respond to my request to fix my car. I can't get a rental car and I got to take my kid to school or to work, or I got to get to work, or I'm hurt and I can't afford to go to the doctor. All these things that happen all the time that people are pissed about because companies like insurance companies or corporate, entities that we are in, and yeah. And so people are like, pardon my French, fuck that. I want to get rude.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
And it works on so many levels because one, it's memorable. Get rude. It's a two-word phrase. It's very simple, but it pushes back against kind of your common enemy where, you are working against the insurance company and it brings in your client where their pain point is because they don't know what to do. They've hired you because they don't know how to handle the situation. They don't know what forms to fill out. They don't know what is to be expected from the insurance companies, and they don't know when they're being taken advantage of. And so it is time to stop being polite because if you're polite, you're going to be taken advantage of. And so getting rude is the real answer here. And I love every piece of this branding. I can't tell you how much. And the second piece of this is that it's authentic to you. Not everybody can be get rude. Not only does it, clearly fit your last name and it's a little bit of a pun, and I love that, but it's genuine to your personality and you can lean into it and really embrace that. And I think that's a big takeaway for attorneys who are listening to this is no matter what you position your branding to be, it needs to be something that can only be yours and that you can 100% lean into.
It has to be authentic because people are going to sniff out a charade. Now, I joke, it's not be rude, it's get rude. And there's a difference. Now, a lot of people, they call me like, I want you to get rude. And I don't need to be rude to somebody to be tough, to be aggressive, and to try to get my clients everything they're entitled to. You let off this episode with talking about justice. And I ran a video a couple months back where I walked around with a toy scales of justice. And I would go from like retail establishment I went to the coffee shop, I went to the grocery store, I went to the self-serve gas station, and I kept like trying to buy things with justice, and like nothing worked, right? Like you can't buy, and the way it ended was it's a voiceover of me like doing all these funny like silly things, and it said like justice can't buy squat. Get rude. And it sounds silly, right? This isn't about the money, right? It's not. Nobody should be looking at an injury claim like it's a lottery ticket. That's not what it is. It's supposed to make you whole. Right? They can't make you whole in the same way. They can't put Humpty Dumpty back together. So how do they do it? They do it with medical treatment, best they can, and they try to compensate you for the pain. So yeah, it ultimately is going to boil down to money. What is justice? Justice ends up being somebody paying for something.
And so you are leveraging that to the full capacity. And that is exactly what every attorney should be doing. And so I love this. I mean, you've got some really creative branding going on. You've got some great videos that you've made. And you've mentioned that your wife had a little bit of reservations about the Get Rude campaign. So did your team or other family or friends also share some of the hesitation with this approach? And how did you address it? How did you bring them around?
This is a story I love. It happens to be pretty poignant for me now. So my dad and I were super close, and he passed away a couple months ago. And I actually spoke at PIMCon recently on this topic, and I led off the presentation and closed talking about my dad. And what I said was, and this is true. This is a real story, and it works so well because we had this conversation. One of the first silly videos I did was me dressing a clown. And my dad, I think it was after seeing that one, or it may have been one of the others that followed it, where it was just me in a costume. And he looked at me and said, Lee, what about your reputation? And I looked back at him and I said, Dad, what reputation? No one fucking knows me. And that was the thing is like, before you can worry about what people think about you, if you care at all, they got to know who you are.
Right.
So, why do people do some of the things they do? Like, why is the branding the way it is? It's to try to stop people in their tracks and get their attention so then you can deliver the message, which is how you can help them. Because if you can't stop them and get their attention, how can you tell them what you can do for them? And unless you're 30 years in the business, you've been in a market, God bless the people who like accumulated, or excuse me, assumed a firm from a parent, or they walked into a firm with a 40-year reputation. Well, you're going to have inroads in your community because of that. But if you're young or new or just trying to break out on your own, you got to do something to break through the noise and break through the social currency that these other firms have built up over time. You don't have time.
Right. Right. You don't have time. You don't have everything kind of laid out for you and pre-built for you. And that gives you an incredible opportunity. And so in some ways, I would imagine that this is a lot more fun than having the 30 years of history with your dad or your family legacy behind you, where you can really invent yourself and you can invent yourself as a character that is authentic to you and really have your personality shine through and your priorities and your values be true to your practice and meet people in a unique way and build those relationships that are now your relationships as opposed to legacy relationships.
Percent. And we talked earlier about growing a practice organically. Now I see it. We've gotten to the point. The firm's almost we're about 2.5 years old, and I've gotten to the point where I can somewhat predict how many referrals from past clients, friends, family are going to come through the door. Now the data is bearing itself out. Like this is what's predictable. So the question becomes, how do you foster additional referral sources like that if that's the way you want to do it? Now, the alternative is doing a lot of what I'm doing, which is market and get new cases, right? Develop your own leads through intentional outreach to the population. But unless you have a bunch of lawyers or a bunch of local people that are kind of participating in the hand-to-hand combat, or you have a lot of years of just a ton of past clients that are then sending or coming back as their repeat customers. Be aggressive and go out and try to get the cases yourself if you want to grow or at least maintain what you have.
Right, absolutely. I mean, the worst thing that an attorney can do if they are wanting to grow is to do nothing and just sit and wait. And so you have to try new things. You have to figure out a way to get your face out there. As you said, you can't have a reputation if people don't know who you are. And so as you were building the Get Rude campaign and the Rude branding, did you go all in 100% at first, or did you kind of test the waters out?
So at first they came out as a hybrid. So I was still managing some defense clients. That's how we started. So really my firm launched in June of 2023, but the Get Rude branding didn't start until the first of the year 2024. And that was because I was representing an insurance company and the work that I was doing for them had naturally wound down. We've resolved every case and nothing had come in. And it was like right around the Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays. And I said, I really want to do this. And there's a natural break here where I can tell my client, hey, no more cases. Like I love you guys. And I did tell them this. I was joking, but I wasn't. I said, you guys are too generous. I can't represent you. I need to be suing you.
Right.
And so that's I then when I was ready to start the brand, I had to accumulate some of the assets, right? So we were at first my website was Rudin.law, but I wanted to go get the Get Rude website. So I was able to find that. I got it. More recently, I acquired 833 Get Rude, which is really hard to get because
Oh, wow.
rude and sued are the same.
Oh, wow.
So you can't get these 800 numbers with sued in them anymore. They're all gone. I found one and I got it for what I've now heard in pricing for numbers was a song. So I've got those assets. I trademarked Stop Being Polite and I also trademarked Get Rude. So I own those assets all with the idea of I don't know where this is going to go. But if it goes anywhere, it's going to be on the back of having these easy touch points for people to idiot proof it, right? Why do people have the numbers where it's like all the repeaters, 444, 222? They have them because then people can't forget.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that getting all of those pieces together really builds a comprehensive brand for you as well. And so you really covered all the bases so that you could lean into this 100%, now that the time is right. So now that you have the number and the URL and kind of all of the trademarks and all those pieces in place, what types of marketing tactics have you used that have embodied the Get Rude concept?
So we are heavy in digital, meaning we're not doing any traditional media. No billboards, no radio, no TV. I'm not saying we won't, and I think the natural progression for us is to go take what we're doing on YouTube and what we're doing on Meta, and then maybe get into OTT or some of the comparable products. That would make sense as a natural progression. Take the vertical videos, cut them horizontal, and run them there. But I think for a young firm, an agile firm, it's the digital marketplace is the best way to get yourself out there on what might be a smaller budget than you could ever make a dent on with TV or with radio or having, accumulating the billboards. I haven't even explored what it's like to try to take billboards from folks that have been in the market for so long and have dozens or hundreds. Like, how do you go get them if they already have them?
Right.
So I haven't even begun to explore that. But the idea here for me is be intentional about what you're doing. Make sure you have good creative because if you're going to record the same stuff that everybody else is like, and you don't look particularly different, right? I'm a white male lawyer. You think there's more than one of me around? But if I looked different and I was particularly unique, that might be different, but I don't. So I got to do something different, and that's where the branding and then some outlandish videos and verbiage will hopefully get people to remember.
Right. Because the first piece is to get them to see you. And then the second piece is to get them to remember you. And it can be
Yeah.
really easy to get seen for, these lawyers who already have the billboards and kind of have their white man face in a suit saying, we get you the justice you deserve. All, plastered all over every billboard. But that's not going to get anybody to remember anything. But you've also done something really creative. And for those listeners who are also watching the video here, you've kind of created a walking billboard for yourself and for your friends in the merchandise that you have. So in your shirt that you're wearing today, it says "Stop being polite." And if I'm not mistaken, you have several of these types of shirts that people like to wear.
That's right. No, it's funny. You asked the question, and I talked about one of the things we're doing, but I left the other
Yeah.
two segments out. So the other
Yeah.
two things that we do a great deal are we give out free merch to everybody. I don't think no one's ever bought a piece of my gear. It's all been free. The caveat now is that I have a store on my website that on getrude.com. If you go to the top right hand corner, there's the Get Rude Gear button. You can go. We have 6 different shirts up. They're free. You just got to pay for the shipping, and I buy the shirt. So if you want something, go look. We got some cool designs up there, and then I have a bunch of stuff in the office that I give out to people. We sponsor the local independent pro wrestling promotion. So I go to these events. Again, it aligns with what we do, with our style, our branding, and the people are every man. They're men, they're women, they're every race, color, creed. They go from kids to grandparents, and it's awesome. And honestly, it spans socioeconomic levels. I remember one of the first events I ran into a lawyer that I knew who was a defense lawyer, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm so jealous you get to do this. Like we love these guys, but our firm would never let us sponsor the wrestling promotion, but I can do it." And it's great because you meet people, and this is like how you develop those additional referral sources. It's that hand-to-hand combat. You just get to know them, and you hang with them every month because they come to an event and they see you at your table and they come BS with you. And then after a while, something's going to happen. They're like, "Oh, I should call the Get Rude guy or you should call the Get Rude guy." And that's really all. That's what this is all about.
Right, it is. I mean, it's creating an opportunity for a conversation. You are a walking conversation starter. And because people are going to ask, what do you mean by stop being polite? What do you mean by get rude? And then it gives you a gateway to really talk about what you do and what you're passionate about and how you can help. And I love how all of that works together. And one of the things that we talk about when we are working with firms, especially on their branding, is timing. And branding is one of those things where, I mean, if you have a unique brand, it can work a little bit faster, but a lot of times branding takes a while to pay off and to really see cases start to come through the door because of your branding initiatives. What have you found to be kind of the timeline for how long it took for your branding to work and to start getting recognized and getting calls because of that branding initiative?
So this is going to be anecdotal, and I guess it goes to some of the direct response marketing you're doing and kind of knowing that at least people are seeing it because you don't know. You know you see it, but you're in the algorithm, so you're going to see it, and probably your friends and family are going to see it. But it's when does the person you don't know that's out of your network see it that tells you, okay, like this should be working. Because sometimes you don't trust the vendor, and they're telling you this many impressions and this and that. But when you get the calls from people and they say, I want to get rude, like I saw your video, or somebody says, I saw you on TV, and I'm like, I'm not on TV. You must have seen my YouTube ad running on YouTube TV because you're watching it on your TV and you think it's like
TV?
broadcast.
Yeah.
I was like, awesome. That means it's working. But we've had that a lot. People call me like, you said you were going to get rude, and I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then I've had other issues. Look, I've had clients. We got fired yesterday by a guy that he didn't like that I told him the truth,
Yeah.
and that's part of it too. All right. Sometimes our jobs tell you when your case doesn't have legs, or the legs you think it has ain't so good. That's the cost of doing business. If I'm going to get fired because I tell the client the truth, like I'll take another notch. Right? That's not the first time it's happened. It's not going to be the last time. But that's what my obligation is to you. We're on the same team. I got to tell you if the juice ain't worth the squeeze sometimes.
Right. And especially when you're working on contingency. Like, I mean, I think, we've all run into those cases where you have a client approach you and either they don't have the insurance, or the other party doesn't have the insurance, or they don't have the case where the injury is really from negligence. So any of that can really damage a case. And I mean, it's a hard reality that you just have to say this isn't going to work. And I mean, I honestly run into that a lot when we have law firms approach us that are coming from a market that's either just too saturated, or they don't have the budget, or it's just not realistic for them. And it's a hard conversation to have, but you have to have it to protect your own integrity, because now that you do have a reputation, you need to protect it.
I think what you said makes a lot of sense. Like sometimes you're telling it to your clients, I'm telling it to mine. They're different kinds of clients, but the same message. And a lot of young lawyers learning, and probably lawyers across decades, you don't really know who to trust, who to believe. Like you think the person you're talking to is a trusted advisor, and sometimes they might just be a salesperson. And then you get in bed with them and you realize like that person was a charlatan and they weren't telling me the full complexion of things. That's disappointing. As a human, it's disappointing. When I hear stories from other clients that come to me and they tell me what their lawyer had done, and I say, well, that shouldn't have happened. Like that won't happen here. That shouldn't have happened. I know that if a guy leaves my firm, it's not going to be because we did something unethical, because we didn't give him all of the advice he or she is entitled to. Might not be happy with how we do it or happy with what we say to you, but it's our obligation to tell you. And if you want to walk, it's your case. You always got to remember that.
Right. And I mean, honestly, you can always trust somebody more if they don't take your money. uh, uh, at
Right.
the end of the day, that's, yeah, if they are willing to walk away from a dollar to make sure that you have the right information, that's the kind of person I would want to do business with long term. So I
Yep.
think that that's a great feather to have in your cap in terms of building your brand and building your reputation and building your goodwill within the community is, if somebody looks at a review that, that guy could leave on Google, this guy wouldn't work with me. He wouldn't take my case. Well, I think that's great. I think that means that he said no to an opportunity where that, he could have said yes and not done right by you. So I think that can actually be a big point in your favor if it's created the right way, if that message is created the right way.
100%.
So talk to me a little bit more about the types of cases that you're seeing come in. So you clearly had more of a traditional branding when you were working with the defense firm. Have you noticed any difference in the quality of cases that you've seen come through the door when you've implemented this branding strategy?
You can't say it's the quality. I mean, I think any lawyer will tell you in our space, the best cases are the ones that come by referral, right? Because odds are, if it's somebody who's still searching for a lawyer, maybe they've tried to find somebody else, or they don't know anybody, so there might not be the best case there. And that's not entirely true across the board, because I have some great cases that we got through advertising. Like, really, one of my probably two best cases came from advertising, but the other one came from referral. A family member of a past client who we helped and did great with, and they trusted us. That's how that one came. So I can't say that I can paint with a broad brush, but there's definitely folks that say, hey, we only want these kinds of cases, and that's what they market for. I want to help as many people as I can. It has to be within the scope of what we do, but I'm okay. I treat your $15,000, policy case the way I treat the $1 million policy case. It just, yours is going to resolve faster. We're going to get you set up the same way, which is whatever you need, we're going to try to get you as best we can, and then try to collect every penny we can for the harm that you suffered. That's our marching orders for everybody.
Yeah. And that's how every case really should be approached. And the clients that are working with you, they can know that you are going to do absolutely everything for them that you can, because that's your obligation. And that's why you got into this. And that's why you chose this side of the profession.
Lindsay, the one thing I said this, probably the first podcast I ever did, I said this. I said, the legal industry is a service industry. We're just a professional service. So yeah, of course, like, we think that we should be trusted, but in the end, we're providing a service to a client who may not know as much as we do, but is entitled to the explanation that you would give anybody. And in the end, it's their case. So if they don't want to do something, you can't force them to, nor should you try to. All you can do is advise them the best you can of the pros and cons of the decision they want to make. Right? I'm having a conversation with a guy right now. Client is a little bit difficult. He wants to do something. And I said, he's like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm like, I can't tell you what to do. All I can do is advise you. But at a point, if you don't trust my advice, we're not going to be able to walk in lockstep. And then I can't represent you to the best of my ability. And then maybe we part ways. So maybe there's a middle ground here where you don't have to follow everything I'm saying, but at least you absorb the guidance and then make your decision. At least I know I've done my part to give you the tools to make, again, a big boy or a big girl decision.
Right. They need to be able to have all the information, but at the end of the day, it's their choice. And that's the best
That's
way
it.
to serve. And that's really the only way to serve well in this role. To circle this back to
Yeah.
branding, just for a couple more questions, because my business partner Len gave me a couple questions that he he really wanted to know the answer to and your input on.
All right.
Len says, as long as the branding is memorable, it is successful. Do you think that's true?
I'll say it a different way, Len. If I can't be famous, I might as well be infamous.
Oh, I like that. I think that's a
Okay.
great answer
But,
there.
right? But it all goes back to what we were saying. If they know you, you have a shot. At least you're in the arena. Half the people are going to hate my branding. But if half of them hate me, maybe the other half love me. And I don't even need the other half. I need like a segment of that half. And then we do quite well as a firm.
Right, right. I think that's a great way to look at it. Because again, it comes back to being known, being found. And in the SEO world, like the motto that I tend to live by is that a client can't call you if they can't find you. And so for SEO, it's all about showing up.
100%.
And for your branding, it's all about being aware of it, knowing that you exist, and then building your reputation around that knowledge that you exist in the first place.
What's funny, there are two sides to the coin, right? Like you can be super entertaining, and that's one way to be memorable. You also could be very boring. And boring is memorable too if you just like do it the right way. There's a guy, I think he's in Buffalo, Bill Matar, like hit by a car, call Matar. And apparently I don't know him personally, but I've heard people say like he's a very boring guy and he just embraces being the boring guy. And the way he's messaging is boring is good, right? The tortoise beats the hare at the end of the day, and boring can get you the same results, right? So, okay, some people are going to love that. They're going to eat it up. And some people are like, no way, I'm going to the rude guy. Perfect.
Yeah.
Now we're all helping people.
Well, I mean, it just reminds me of Ben Stein and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where it's like the Bueller. Like, if you lean into the boring
Yep.
effect, it can be iconic. So, yeah, whatever it is that your branding is for our listeners here, find out what really makes you unique. And if you don't have anything that makes you unique, go do something and make yourself unique. And then lean into that and share that and create something memorable and build your legacy around something that you can be really proud of that can only come from you. And so the last question I have for you, Lee, is what is next for Rudin Law and the Get Rude campaign? What's on the horizon?
So, I didn't start this firm with a plan, right? Like I didn't say, oh, I have to have a firm named after me. I was at two firms and I was a partner there. I didn't care about my name being on the door. Like that never mattered to me. And, this business, I'm in it and I just want to do the best I can for the business, for the people that work with me, for the clients that have trusted us with our cases. And the way that I see that going is just help as many people as you can. Now, maybe over time, I'll say, I really just want to work on these kinds of cases, or, I don't want to take so much volume. But for now, I want to help as many people as we can because that's how we're going to build a reputation of being a great firm that cares about our clients. We've got lawyers. I'm licensed in two states. I have a lawyer that's also licensed in two other states. So now we have lawyers in-house licensed in four. But we try to take cases everywhere and find partners because if someone wants to trust us, we want to be able to honor that trust. We know people. I know people all around the country. I can find us a great tag team partner in wherever you are, and then let's go kick some butt. And you'll remember that the Get Rude guys were the ones that helped you. And the next time around, you'll tell the friend or the family member that they should stop being polite and get rude.
I love that. So go out and take over the world, or at least the United States, build some partners and help as many people as you can.
We'll plant the Get Rude flag on the moon, right?
I love it. That's awesome. Well, Lise, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all about your brand development and everything that is making your law firm tick. I really have loved having you on.
I appreciate you having me. This is a lot of fun.